In this video, I'm going to teach you the fastest way to awaken your Kundalini and reach spiritual enlightenment. But if we haven't met before, my name is KoHaraLan, and welcome to the Mantra Corner, where we discuss meditation practices, ancient wisdom, and the stranger side of deep spirituality. Before we get started, though, I've got to discuss a few things and make sure that we're all on the same page. So first of all, what is enlightenment? What even is enlightenment? You know, when we talk about this topic, depending on what school you come from and how you're looking at it, this word can mean very different things. So I figured it's very important to start there. Now, when I'm speaking about enlightenment, what I'm talking about is the spiritual recognition of one's own true nature as divinity. And this isn't a belief or a psychological understanding of some kind, but it's actually a direct experience of the Supreme Being. And what is Kundalini? Well, Kundalini is simply the awakened power of God. It is the goddess in her awakened form. So we refer to as Kundalini Shakti when we're talking about her awakened form. One of the things that's critical for this understanding is the recognition that God has become the entire universe. Now, the human being is both God and goddess. The form aspect of God is Kundalini Shakti. It has become everything in this world. The energy that manifests as this entire universe is Kundalini, is Shakti. They are one and the same. So the energy that allows these words to come out of my mouth is Kundalini. The energy that forms this body is Kundalini. The energy that forms the thoughts that are going on in your mind as you listen to this is Kundalini. The manifestation of everything in your experience is Kundalini. And this is a very, very powerful but often overlooked understanding. I mean, this is the basis on which the entire realization of spiritual enlightenment is built. If it doesn't have this as its basement, if it doesn't have this as its basis, it's not actually spiritual enlightenment. It's something else. It might be self-improvement. It might be self-help. It might be self-actualization. It might be any of these things, but it's not actually spiritual enlightenment. Spiritual enlightenment is the recognition of one's own self as divinity. It's not a belief. Again, let me state this very clearly. It is the recognition. In other words, you see within, you have the insight that what you are is, in essence, divinity. Is God manifest. And as God manifests himself, we're just using gender terms to understand this, but in God's formless essence, essential nature, we call him Shiva, Yahweh. We call him God. It is that aspect of God which is formless, the awareness in which everything manifests, this entire universe. Consciousness is God. It's what you are in your very innermost essence. It's what allows these words to make sense. It's what allows your body to form. It's the blueprint. It is everything. It's your awakened presence that is able to comprehend these words. This is Shiva, the Lord, awareness, consciousness. And if you think about it, go back in your mind to a time before any creation happened. Okay, so here is God, all alone, in his abode, by himself, with nothing but God. And yet, he longs to create experience. And so he creates a world, manifests it. But from what? Well, he only has his own self to manifest it from. You see, only God exists. So, as everything comes out of that, everything is in essence God also. But ignorance and the inability to see this and recognize it fully with insight and clarity within is what leads to all suffering, is what leads to ignorance, is what leads to the state, the bound state that we find ourselves in, the cycle of birth and rebirth and suffering. So enlightenment is the pathway that leads us out of that suffering. And it comes about through the recognition, again, through one's own inner self. So all of the seeking that we do out in the world, that won't take us there. Anything that we can find in a book or in a teaching, anywhere, that will only, at best, lead us within, where the search actually begins and ends. So here's the teaching. Very simply, very powerfully. Whatever it is that you're experiencing in this moment, recognize it as none other than the goddess. Ah, yes, the goddess in the form of footsteps. Yes, even the steps going down the stairs. The goddess, form of the goddess. Everything is the goddess. and everything within that we experience is the goddess. Now here's a very powerful and practical way to use this effectively. So let's say you're dealing with some kind of inner turmoil. Let's say you've got something uncomfortable inside of you. Let's say a desire that's not been fulfilled. Matter of fact, desires are the number one cause of suffering, of all suffering of any kind. It's desire. It's wanting things to be different than they are. When we fully accept things as they are, we have no suffering. So all suffering, in essence, comes from some form or another of desire, wanting things to be different. But what is desire? Isn't that also the goddess? You see, that is the secret. When we understand this subtly, when we can see this truth, it will revolutionize our entire lives. Now, this desire that I have, right, which is causing me suffering, as I look within, I can see and feel, yes, it is this desire that causes suffering. So first of all, let's get that clear. We cannot look outside and think, when I get this thing, when I acquire this thing that I desire, that will lead to my happiness and my peace of mind. Let's say you have a desire for spiritual enlightenment. Let's say you have a desire for Kundalini awakening, right? So, what is that desire? It's the form of God. It is already God. However, we don't see it. So we go about seeking to try to change things, to try to find that which we are seeking, thinking that that is going to lead to our fulfillment, to our happiness, to our spiritual enlightenment. When I get that teaching, then I'll be enlightened. When I get to go and see that teacher, then I'll be enlightened. When I go to that retreat, then I can get enlightened. When I can sit for, an hour at a time in meditation, then I'll be enlightened. Well, all these things may be necessary along the way, but they're not directly going to lead you to enlightenment. The direct path to enlightenment is simply this: recognize what you are. Recognize that everything you've been doing to find happiness, to find peace of mind, to find enlightenment, to awaken your Kundalini, everything you've been doing is futile. Futile. It's all resistance. It's all based in desire. You're resisting the way things are. And again, resistance is futile. Even if you get the thing that you think you want, it won't lead you to fulfillment because you're getting it outside of yourself. It's coming from without instead of from within. So if you get something from without, you're going to lose it someday. It'll be taken from you and then you'll be suffering. So if I give you enlightenment, then I can take it away. That sucks. Then you're dependent on me. Then I haven't made you a master. I've made you a slave. This is how many teachers behave. So a true master raises all those he teaches to his own awareness, right? Now think about this. Jesus Christ, his understanding was that I and the Father are one. He said it very clearly. I and the Father are one. Now, did he say, I want you to worship me and listen to what I have to say? And, put your trust and faith in me, and that's how you'll be saved. Well, that's an interpretation that a lot of people have, but it's false. If he were a true master, which I believe him to be, then his method would be to raise those devotees of his up to his own level of awareness, which is I and the Father are one. You see? So many people are afraid to accept this. They're afraid because, I'm not good enough. I'm not worthy. Only Jesus was worthy. Only the guru is worthy. Only these great, great saints were worthy. No. The Lord exists within everyone. The Lord dwells within you, as your own very self. But you don't recognize it. That's why you suffer. So this process will begin to undo it. So you look at the thing inside. Look at what's causing you distress. See that it is nothing but the goddess. All things have their form as the goddess. Remember, God's energy is nothing but the goddess. Nothing but the goddess. All energy, all manifestations. It is nothing but, if we back our view up macro enough, we will see that no matter what little deity we're talking about, whatever form we're talking about, it's all the form of the one. And the form that the one takes, we refer to as the goddess, Kundalini Shakti. The awareness in which all of this unfolds, the awareness of the entire universe, is God in his masculine essence, Shiva. Awake awareness, presence, formless. The background out of which everything arises. And this is also our essential nature. See, Shiva and Shakti are not two, they're one. They are just phases. It's like water is the same whether it's in ice form or in vapor form. It's still water. This is the same way that God is. When God is manifest, we call her the goddess, Kundalini Shakti. The awareness, the formless essence, we call Shiva. And again, this is only important for recognition's sake, so that we have an idea of an understanding of how to delineate what is this, what is that, what am I looking for, what is it that I hope to understand and gain. And this is the recognition that we are seeking, because this recognition leads to freedom. It leads to liberation. It leads to spiritual enlightenment. So when you see that that feeling inside that you've been working so hard to get rid of and transform is the goddess. You've been fighting with the goddess, struggling against her. Do you think you're going to win? And as you see this, you start to relax your struggle. You start to listen and pay attention. What does this goddess mother want me to see with this desire, with this pain, with this suffering I'm experiencing? Why has she come to me in this form? This is a critical distinction from the way that most of us see things most of the time. They're asking things like, how can I change this, God? Why did this happen to me? Why do I have to suffer like this? Why do these people do this? Why is she like that? Why is he like that? Why can't I have this? Those are not questions worthy of you. You are God. If you're suffering, it's because you are suffering. You are creating your own suffering through ignorance. Wake up. Suffering is God. You're trying to get away from the suffering and get to God. You don't understand. Suffering is God. Right here, right now, whatever you're experiencing, this is God. And when you recognize that, you experience great bliss. As you begin to recognize it, you begin to let go. Actually, letting go just begins to happen on its own because you don't do it. You recognize that you aren't the doer, that actually the goddess does all. For this is all her form. So again, whatever arises in your experience, instead of judging it, instead of thinking it should be this way, it should be that way, I don't like this, I don't want this, I want the other thing. Do you see how that's creating your suffering? It's not the thing. It's not the situation. There's nothing out there. Your suffering is being created and maintained from within. From ignorance. Ignorance of this simple fact that it is God that you are avoiding. It is the goddess. You are trying to skip steps. You're trying to jump ahead, but you haven't dealt with and faced the reality of what's right here in front of you. You see, when you begin to accept what's here in front of you as it is, seeing that it is here for a reason, to teach you something, to give you an insight, so that you can recognize the truth, so that you may be free, so that you can attain a freedom that isn't dependent on whether or not you get this or get that, or whether or not this person does this or says that, gives you the respect and appreciation that you've been hoping for, or says, yes, I'll marry you, or says, yes, let's make this business merger and we'll make millions. your peace of mind, your happiness, your enlightenment, your enlightened state won't depend on any of that. And if they take it all away, you still have your state. You see, that's how I found my freedom. When I was in prison, I began to look within and say, how could I be free even here? What is freedom? Freedom isn't getting what you want. Freedom is knowing who you are. When you know who you are, you know who God is. When you know who the goddess is, you experience great bliss. Peace will arise from you effortlessly, and you will be a blessing to all those whom you encounter, because that divine Shakti will be awakened and flowing and pouring through you. You won't be acting selfishly out of a need to fulfill desires and get what you want. You just act out of love, spontaneously. Such a beautiful form. Just this. So when you have the right vision, every moment becomes ecstasy. Every place becomes God's abode. And everyone you encounter is the form of the goddess. So what could there possibly be to want? I trust that you'll practice this. Don't just listen to these words, but actually spend some time. Go within. These realizations are one on the meditation mat. They're one in the laboratory of your own mind and your own being. But you have to look. You have to go within, and you have to go within honestly, rigorously, in a disciplined way. You can't let yourself off the hook. But if you take those steps, if you begin to recognize this is the goddess, this too is God, yes, this, even this, you'll stop resisting. You stop praying for God to make it different. You stop praying for God to change things. Because the only thing that needs to change is your own awareness. That should be your prayer. Let that be all our prayers. Oh God, allow my awareness to come into alignment and harmony with your own will, that I may not be separate and suffer, but that I may become consciously aligned and one. I trust this is going to be very, very powerful for you. If you get this, you will be amazed at how your life transforms. I mean, you will transform your life into heaven. You will begin to experience heaven on earth, and you will know who you are, your true essential nature. You will know it directly, non-conceptually, not, oh, I'm this, I'm that, and I think about this, and this is what I think I am because this makes sense. No. You'll see who you are. Just like I see who you are. So don't be fooled by appearances. The Lord has become everything in this universe. She has taken all forms. And the recognition of this leads to spiritual enlightenment, true peace, true happiness. So take heart. If you have any questions, reach out and let me know. Let me know in the comments below if you've done some practice with this, what changes did you notice? How did it manifest for you? How did it affect your state? All right, so spend some time putting that into practice. Spend some time contemplating this. Go within. Recognize everything you're experiencing. Everything, all these desires, all these feelings, all these uncomfortable inner impulses, everything you've been trying to get rid of, everything you've been trying to fix, everything you've been trying to change. Recognize this is the goddess. And surrender your resistance. Look within and ask, why is this appearing to me? What's the lesson? The lesson is you've been resisting somewhere, and this is an opportunity to surrender. With that surrender comes liberation. With that surrender comes spiritual enlightenment. With that surrender, everything you've been looking for arises naturally. All right, so put that into practice. I can't wait to hear about all the revelations and inner growth that you experience. I want to hear about your spiritual enlightenment, how it's coming, how it's progressing. So make sure you leave a comment below or reach out if you have any questions. I look forward to seeing you on another video. Until then, remember, resistance is futile.